Welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John, and I'm here to review a brand new 2026 movie, and that movie is Hellcat.
Come on now.
Who are you?
I am the owner, proprietor of this mobile home and truck that's pulling you down the highway.
Why am I inside here?
You've been infected.
Holy shit.
We got less than an hour to get you to the doctor, if that.
This movie was released to streaming on Shudder in August of 2026. It is directed by Brock Bodell. It stars Dakota Gorman, Todd Terry, James Austin Johnson, and Liz Altweiler. Basic premise. A woman wakes in the back of a moving camper trailer with a badly infected wound. A voice from a truck towing tells her they must reach a doctor within the hour or she'll suffer horrific fate. Before we get into my review of the movie streaming on Shudder, Hellcat, I would just like to take a moment to say my deepest condolences for the family and friends of Hayden Panettiere, the star of Scream 4 and Scream 6, who played Kirby, who I just recently learned that she passed away within a couple days ago. And we just went through a similar thing with Sam Neill, the star of Jurassic Park, and now Hayden. And she's quite young, only 36 years old. I really enjoyed her character of Kirby. I know she's been in other television shows, but I only know her from the Scream franchise. So any of those who are feeling the loss of Hayden, my condolences. Now, this was a movie that seems to be disguised as one type of movie and then behaving more like another. So, and I guess we'll have to elaborate on all of that in spoilers. However, this movie Hellcat is giving the vibe of a smart psychological thriller, and it's a very gimmicky film where a girl wakes up in the back of a camper that is moving, and for the majority of this movie we are, from her point of view, in the camper as she's experiencing what's going on with her. Has she been kidnapped? Is she under some sort of spell? What's wrong with her? What's her fate going to be? And how is this little mystery going to play out? So, with no further ado, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly on Hellcat. So in the positives is the fact that it does do a pretty good job of developing a mystery, creating a premise, and it is kind of a gimmicky presence because it's one of those premises where we're kind of locked from one point of view. We're in a very small, condensed setting of a camper, and we're not really sure what's going on. There's a guy that's clearly driving a vehicle in the front that she can't really see, but can only hear. She's also not feeling 100%, and everything that's in this camper just is creepy. We're getting the vibe that she probably was kidnapped, and she's probably sitting there thinking like, I'm probably gonna get murdered or maybe sexually assaulted, or just something terrible could potentially happen to me. I don't know where I am, and I don't know where I'm going.
We ain't alone out here.
What's next? What's the plan?
It's important that you stay calm.
The next thing I'll put in the positive is Dakota Gorman and Todd Terry, who play our main people in this movie. The girl in the back of the van is Dakota, and the guy driving is Todd. His character name is Clive. And they really do put on a pretty decent performance for what this is. It's a very dramatic role. There's a lot that has to be emoted with feelings. I mean, the characters are grieving, especially Dakota's character is definitely grieving. She recently lost her mom. She's dealing with that. She's also put in a terrifying situation. It gets very physical at a point where, there's a lot of physical work to what she's going through, because it seems like not only is she trapped, but there's something wrong with her, like physically wrong with her, and she's pregnant. So it's like, is what's wrong with me normal because I'm going through pregnancy and my body is going through weird changes, or is it something more than just that? And I'll let that lead me to the mix. So in the mix is definitely going to be the setting being kind of this gimmicky, like I'm stuck in the back of a camper for an entire ride. I wouldn't say it was terrible because it doesn't really give pacing issues because, when I think of Iron Lung, which was very similar, you had one character in one enclosed space for the entire movie, and the pacing on that was very boring. The pacing here was okay. There was some lulls, but because of everything our girl's experiencing and because of everything she's going through physically and emotionally, it is better. And I think that's kind of why I'm mixed on it, because it's just like, eventually it is going to get out of the camper, but it takes a while to get out of the camper. And the movie as a whole has a long wait till we get there. I'm trying to move out of the sunlight so there's not this huge glare on my face. But anyhow, I need to get curtains for this room, I guess. Anyhow, I'm going to let that lead to the negatives. So there is something pushing. I'm trying to keep the front end very spoiler free so that we can talk about the spoilers in the spoiler section, so I don't spoil kind of what is really going on in this movie. But I will say this movie suffers with kills or gore or like intense action. I guess that's why this does lead more into a psychological thriller movie, even though once we learn what's behind all of this, it really should have been something more horrific, and maybe we could have gotten more horrific scenes with what's at play. That's the best way I can word it. There is a lot of psychological thriller to this, not too much horror, like bloody horror. And given what's at stake, it should be more bloody.
Oh, my pretty baby. Oh, my sweetie baby.
Where are we going?
Oh, my pretty baby. Oh, my sweetie baby.
So let's make this all make more sense by spoiling it and getting into the spoilers. I will say I'm giving it a decent recommend. It is streaming on Shudder. Check it out and then come back to the spoiler section. Otherwise, you've been warned, spoilers. So this movie opens up with our leading final girl, played by Dakota Gorman. Her character name is Lena, and she wakes up in this camper, and it's very apparently that the camper's moving. She doesn't really remember how she got into the camper. She doesn't know whose camper it is or where it's going. And, she feels like maybe whoever's got her maybe put drugs in her because there's just a physical aspect to her suffering. On top of the fact that I already mentioned she's pregnant. Well, it doesn't take too long before we get the other person, the other main star, Clive, is talking through the radio to her, and he's basically saying, I'm a good, honest man, I'm trying to help you. But it's kind of like she's seeing kind of right through that, like, she's not believing it, right? She feels like she's been kidnapped, like that she could be killed or worse, and he's not really explaining it right. He doesn't really say much. He's just like, we've got to get to a hospital so that you'll be okay. Right? So who's going to believe this, right? She's reacting in the appropriate way, like, let me out, just stop, pull over. He's never going to stop and pull over. So, how's it going to play out for like an hour and a half movie of this? So, we have him talking to her for a little bit. Then we realize that there is another person in the camper, and that person, it's kind of the way the movie shows it to you, it's kind of tricking you, like, is this another person that he's kidnapped and done something to? Because it seems like they're screaming, they're panicking, they're not making any sense, they're just kind of acting strange, and he literally takes this other woman out and puts them up in the front with him in the vehicle. So it's like a pickup truck pulling this camper, right? So he takes this other girl out. So now we know that there's another girl at stake. And we're sitting here thinking like, yeah, this guy don't seem so innocent. He's got two girls in the back of the truck. Now he's moved the one up. Then he decides that he's going to phone into this radio station and he's talking about the specific doctor that he wants to meet that's at some sort of amusement park in Memphis. So again, this is sounding quite weird. Like, who goes after having something serious happening to them and needing a doctor's care, meets at an amusement park in the middle of Tennessee? And I guess they're from Nashville, so that's a pretty big distance, right?
Welcome back to another midnight cast of We're Out There. As always, I'll be guiding you through the underbelly, place the mainstream media won't take you to see the freaks and ghouls.
So, you know, it's not making sense. And like, he's talking to this radio station, and, you know, he's sounding crazy over the radio station. And she's just trying to get out. Now, sometimes the truck stops, like, I guess they stop for gas or something. And like, she hears other people outside. She's trying to carve "help me" into the window. So there is some little action points that do happen there. But eventually, he realizes that this doctor that he's been searching for isn't real. Like, there is no doctor, whatever the name was, Ligavi or something like that. And now it's like, oh, now what are we going to do? There's clearly something wrong with her. So what's wrong with her? And what's wrong with the other girl? Well, and it takes well into the second, going to the third act, for them to finally leak what really is going on. And he refers to her, the other girl, he says to the radio station, "I've got a weir," meaning werewolf. Like, werewolf. Hello, she's a werewolf? Who's a werewolf? The one girl's a werewolf? Is this girl a werewolf too? So it turns out, yes, they are werewolves. So the other girl in the vehicle, the one that's now in the front, is his daughter. She's been a werewolf, and he chains her up back there when she turns so that she can't do anything. And then when she turns back, they have quality of life, I guess. Whatever you can have with a werewolf daughter. And then this girl also was attacked by the werewolf at wherever I guess she was camping. And she's not turning normal. So what's the difference? The difference is she's pregnant. So I guess this werewolf movie, this is a werewolf movie. You're led to believe that you're watching a movie like Seven or Suspect Zero, and then once the werewolf element enters, then you realize that, wait a second, this isn't like a psycho killer movie. This is like a werewolf movie. So, and this is what I kind of wanted to elaborate on in negative. So it's a werewolf movie, but we really don't get werewolf action. So it's very similar to Wolfman, where like in Wolfman it takes so long for the wolf to change, and then like there isn't a ton of werewolf action in Wolfman either. And it's very similar here. So even more so, that this werewolf we never see a werewolf get gotten. We never see anything really. We just deal with the psychological consequence of being a werewolf. And what makes this even more, so this was kind of doing a twist. So like, then you learn that's a werewolf. Then you learn she's a werewolf. Then you learn she's pregnant. Then you learn the baby's a werewolf. So like, the reason why she wasn't turning as quick, and she did bite him at one point, and he didn't turn, and it's the baby. So eventually she gives birth. So like, in the tail end it gets a little complicated. So like, this police officer, once he realizes that he messed up and there's no doctor, he lets her go. So it turns out Clive isn't the bad guy. Clive is actually the good guy. And he was just trying to do the right thing. And I guess maybe it's to be assumed, and maybe I just dawned on me right now, that it was probably his daughter that attacked her, was the werewolf that attacked her prior to the movie starting, and she's the reason she turned. That's the only thing that makes sense now. Now that makes sense. So yeah, that has to be it. Though they never show that, they never really elaborate on that. So she's walking along in the middle of almost to Memphis, and she gets pulled over by a cop, and the cop puts her in the back. So the cop character was weird, because the cop character wasn't really acting right either. So he's really more of a villain than Clive, because he's driving her not to a hospital and not to where she needs to be. And then, you know, she gets out and gets away from him, and Clive kills him. Clive comes back for her. I don't know how he knew that she was in danger, but Clive comes back for her. She ends up giving birth to her werewolf baby, and Clive also dies in this scuffle with the police officer because he was shot. Or no, he was stabbed. She stabbed him. She actually killed him, but she killed him before she realized what he was really doing. Anyhow, this movie does get a little convoluted, okay? So, I mean, it's one of these straight to Shudder ones, you know? It's this movie, all right, we're gonna wrap this up. So, like, this movie has a decent premise, and the whole idea of it is pretty neat. It is a new take on werewolves, but I feel like I know they were trying to keep the whole werewolf thing in the bag to make it like a surprise, but by doing so, they really kept the werewolf gore out of it. So we're going to get down to business on this one, because this one was a fun concept, but lacking in intensity. Psychologically, it's pretty decent, and I really do like the acting. So I'm going to just kind of blend all my emotions with this one, and we're going to give it a basic burger. So please, like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, all that jazz, and don't forget to stay scared of those werewolves that are in secret.